Hello and welcome back to Far Beyond the World. We will be picking up where we left off, which is after Ranok leaves you and makes you try to pee on his side of the house. Once I jump over the ledge, I almost trip over the clutter that previously occupied it. I have half a mind to just return all of this to the sill, but considering how musty this house is, I'd rather be able to leave the window open for a while. For the time being, I simply move it all to the cupboard. I'm just a guest, I shouldn't rearrange things. When I place the leather-bound book down, I decide to have a quick peek inside. I flip the hardcover, curiously looking over the first page, wondering if I will recognize the lettering. To my surprise, it looks like a regular book, with the regular writing. A brief history of Freefall. Ugh, a history book. Considering my circumstances, it's the last thing I need. It would be like reading Chronicles of Narnia. I laugh at my own joke, putting the book away, only to have my heart sink immediately at the realization I have no idea why it was so funny. What's Narnia anyway? Forever lost. Oh no, not this again. I quickly shake my head, not wanting to deal with another invasive torrent of thoughts. With Ranok gone, I don't have my safety net and I cannot let this day drag on. I need to keep myself busy. I glance around to find something to do, and the first thing that comes to my mind is tidying up the place. It's clear Ranok doesn't spend much time in his house, but that's no excuse to live with so much dust. That's not healthy. I remember seeing a broom earlier near the fireplace, so I walk into the kitchen to find it. I also open up all the windows, leaving the doors to the bedroom ajar so that the fresh air can run through the house while I commence my cleaning. I grab the broom and immediately get to work of brushing all the dirt from the floor and gather up all the cobwebs dotting the walls and corners. Over time, I begin to collect a small heap, which I only grow by brushing more and more dust from all the different nooks and crannies. As I don't see a shovel anywhere, I decide to use one of the dirty linens still bundled up in the bedroom. I lay it out flat in the middle of the floor and simply brush the mound of dust onto it. I then bring the corners together and effectively create a sack. Once that's done, I simply walk over to the window and chuck that dirt outside, flapping the linen over the ledge to dust it off. I rest myself against the wall, rubbing my forehead and releasing an exhausted sigh. This was a bit of a workout, but just as I try to rest, the nagging sensation in my stomach returns. Nope, not today, dark thoughts. I won't let you overwhelm me, even if I have to clean this house inch by inch. Holding the dirty cloth in my hand gives me an idea. I rush over towards the water bowl and decide to use the remaining contents to wash the floor. I simply dip the cloth and then rub it over the wooden panels. Slowly but surely each plank regains its shine and polish. I almost thought this was naked wood, but turns out it was only dull because of all the dirt and grime. The draft makes cleaning that much easier and pleasant, with cool breeze gently kissing my skin. I stop now and then to nibble on what remains of my breakfast. I don't know how long I spent on my knees cleaning the floors. Might have been 2 or 3 hours, but eventually I end up in the bedroom, finishing up the last panel. I stretch out, feeling the pain in my back and my hands, but also a sense of pride at the fruit of my labor. I use whatever water was left inside to clean up the surfaces, dusting off everything with a damp cloth. I could see some stray wolves passing by the windows from time to time, taking a curious gander inside. I guess they just want to sneak a peek at the human, and I can't blame them. Had the roles been reversed, and I learned one of my friends had a werewolf inside of their house, I would have done the same. As the afternoon turns into evening, I admire my handiwork. The cottage looks quite homely now, and just as on cue, I hear knocking at the door. For a moment, I wonder whether I should answer, but that's when a cold voice reaches me. Piglet. I sigh through a smile, quickly opening the doors. Got some food for you. The black male stands at the doorway, holding in his paw a loaf of bread and strings of sausage. Thank goodness, all this work was making me quite hungry. Not to mention, I just lost my only source of occupation that allowed me to steady my emotions. Will you stay with me for a while? The black male regards me with a risen brow, clearly surprised by my suggestion. Don't worry, it's not an immoral proposition. I jest. I'd like some company now that everyone knows I'm here. It should be fine, right? Desperation doesn't suit you, piglet. He scoffs, walking past me and entering the cabin. I hastily close the door as the wolf approaches the table and inspects one of the tankards. Might as well grab a beer if I'm to pup sit you. He teases, looking at me expectantly. Sure, if there is any. I shrug, looking around the kitchen. Vulgor points towards a barrel standing in the corner of the room. Guess Ranok's home is pretty well stocked. He always stashes the good stuff. Vulgor passes me the mug, shoving it into my chest. I guess he expects me to fetch the beer for him. I just shrug and decide to play along. As I approach the barrel, I notice it doesn't have a tap, but I can see that the lid has a handle on it. I lift it up and submerge the mug in the dark liquid. As I bring it back to Vulgor, he has already seated himself comfortably at the table, his gaze clearly darting around the house in mild amusement. I see Ranok has found himself a little den wife. What? I blurt out, blush appearing on my face almost instantly. It was extremely dirty in here. He croons teasingly, taking a gulp of the ale and sliding the bread and sausage across the table towards me. Seriously, I don't want to get allergies. It's enough that there's fur everywhere. I can do without the dust. What's allergies? He asks indifferently, catching me off guard. It's... Fuck, how do I explain it? It's when your body reacts badly to certain things, like getting a rash or a stuffy nose. I propose grabbing a knife and cutting off a thick slice of bread. The wolf gives me a skeptical look, as I enjoy the wonderful aroma of a freshly baked loaf. Dust makes you ill? He scoffs, taking another sip. Well, it can. Fur as well, but so far I'm fine. To be fair, I can't recall if I was ever allergic to fur or dust, but I'm not going to admit I cleaned the entire house because I'm slowly losing my damn mind. I was simply tidying up because the last thing I need is getting allergies. Especially since it's spring, there's plenty of pollen in the air. Vulgor puts the mug down and drills his gaze into me. Flowers make you ill as well? Fuck me, might as well just roll over and die. I curl my lips, staring at the ceiling. You're not a human, you wouldn't understand. Do beastmen even have allergies? I toy with a piece of bread, squishing the slice between my fingers. It's still warm and springy. I doubt anyone in Avalon would understand your nonsense. On that, we can agree. I swear, there is nothing more satisfying than the smell of fresh bread. It completely distracts me from Vulgor's jabs, inviting me to take a bite, and I finally succumb. I gasp, feeling the crust crunch between my teeth. The taste of the rusted grain immediately summons emotions tied to some long-lost memory. A more wholesome time of happiness and joy. I'm in heaven. Doesn't take much to please you, huh? The wolf comments on my obvious satisfaction with a slightly troubled expression. You have no idea how much I wanted some fresh bread. It's almost as if you read my mind. Actually, it was Ranok's idea. He looks at the window. Oh? Ever since he found you, he was learning about humans. Your history, customs, staples of your diet. I discreetly dart my gaze around the house, locating different books stashed in corners. Now that Vulgor mentions it, Ranok doesn't strike me as a scholarly type. He was doing his research while I was still unconscious. It makes me feel almost humbled. We don't care much for bread. It's prey chow, so there's hardly any around that hasn't gone stale. But now that you're no longer a secret, he asked for one to be made fresh for you. I blink, taking in what he just said. Ranok went to all of this trouble for me? Huh. That's extremely considerate and sweet of him. But at the same point, it's hard to differentiate between his general kind-hearted nature and something more. Am I reading into things again? Probably. I mean, he did say he's not into me. Everything alright? The black male asks idly, as he takes another thirsty gulp from his tankard. Yeah. I smile, biting into the bread again. As I chew, I grab the knife and cut off a piece of sausage. My god, Vulgor. Stop staring if you don't like the way I chew. I give it a quick sniff before stuffing it into my mouth. I only now notice that the wolf has been avoiding looking at me for quite a while now. I almost choke, trying to swallow my food through a laugh. Dude, you stabbed me. Being an experienced butcher, I'm sure you've seen worse things than me eating. Wanna bet? He sneers teasingly, giving me side-eye. I just shake my head in amusement and continue with my meal. The sausage is nice, but a little bit too garlicky for my taste. However, I'm not going to complain about the free food. All of this is extremely wholesome and makes me feel warm inside, as if an echo of my past tried to scream through the shroud of my amnesia. I've had to enjoy a homely meal like this before. I sigh, just relishing this sliver of a good memory. We sit like this for a while, Vul simply finishing his ale and not saying much. He doesn't seem to be much of a talker, but I don't mind. His company alone allows me to steel myself against any nagging feelings stalking the recesses of my mind. I just wish I had something to start the conversation with. Despite the bandage looking rather gruesome, you seem to be doing fine. Oh? Yeah. I smile awkwardly, reminded that the dressing is pretty much red and crusty. Well, you did a good job. I rub my side and put him at ease. Looks worse than it feels, that's for sure. Bull readjusts himself, patting the hilt of his dagger. Since you enjoy it so much, I could do it again. He gives me a satisfied grin. At this point, it's hard to tell whether he's teasing or being serious, but I decide to just laugh it off. One has to wonder if you're not into it, considering how you almost begged to get skewered. I roll my eyes, giving him a stern look as the joke becomes slightly tortured. What are you on about? The chief? He asks mockingly. I've heard Ranok's father nearly cut you open like an actual pig. The wolf snorts loudly, slurping the remnants of his beer, while I wince uncomfortably. Yeah. I'm not proud of my carelessness. Had Verissa not intervened, I wouldn't be here. You dropped the ball, Piglet. I told you to be careful. The male nods, giving me a patronizing look. I know. I'm just grateful Verissa stuck up for me. She didn't do it for you, nor she had any other choice. He shrugs, toying with the now empty tankard. Had you been killed without her making her case, all of us would face serious consequences. I assumed as much. I sink in my shoulders, awkwardly trailing my gaze around the room. Somehow I feel embarrassed, as if I disappointed him. But you have more luck than brains. He snorts, noticing my discomfort. The little runt went straight for his dad. Had it been Tano, he'd go for one of the elders, and we'd all be fucked. Perhaps you should tell that to Ranok. I mutter, immediately recalling my conversation with the wolf. He seems to hold a grudge against his brother. Why shouldn't he? The pup is nothing but trouble. The black male scoffs in annoyance. He's still his brother. Half-brother, and siblings don't mean much to us. He waves his paw impatiently. Each of us is expected to have multiple pups, most of which with a different partner. So, the only reason to keep track of all the blood relations is to not accidentally bugger one of them. He lets out a loud snort, as if the idea amused him. Yeah, Ranok's told me as much. Their way of life is definitely much different to what I expected. Why are you worrying about the pup anyway? He has nothing to do with you. I just worry. I wouldn't want Ranok to take it out on him. Psst, 2 peas in a pod. The black male scoffs, slushing the remnants of his drink around the cup. What do you mean? You and Ranok. He shrugs, taking the last gulp of his poison. Worrying about strangers who get you in trouble is exactly what started this whole mess. Then you know I'm right, because saving me was a kind thing to do. Kindness is what gets people killed. The black male nods towards the other tankard on the table. Are you going to have one? I look at his risen brow. I'm not much of an ale drinker. I kind of feel like I have to. But I guess I can humor the wolf. Yeah, sure. Then be a good servant and fill mine up as well. I blink as he pushes his mug towards me, but decide not to make much of his tease. I walk over to the barrel and plunge the tankard one by one, filling them up to the brim with dark liquid. It's almost as black as coffee. Ooh, coffee would be great, but something tells me that it would join the likes of the salt and soap, another frivolity to tease me over. I place the tankard next to the black wolf and he picks it up. Slante. He raises his mug, clearly waiting for me to clang mine into it. Slante. I oblige, and we spill a little bit in the process. I cannot contain a timid chuckle as I sit back and take a sip. The bitterness of the brew hits me almost instantly. It's malty and rich, almost like roasted cereal. It's kind of gross. There's also a hint of floral sweetness to it, and I cannot wrap my fingers around it. I smack my lips, licking off the thin foam that lingered on them. It's like no beer I have ever had, that's for sure. If I drank any, that is. Enjoying it? I think ale is an acquired taste, no? He raises his brow. Considering I've never had anything like it before, only time will tell. I can see my comment catches him by surprise and he laughs, shaking his head. Cheeky little piglet. He takes a long, thirsty gulp, all the while gazing at me almost as if expecting me to match his tempo. Yeah, that's not gonna happen, buddy, but I'm willing to at least try. I take another mouthful, barely even tapping into the contents of the oversized mug. That's definitely more than a pint, at least 2 times more. If you're going to sip it like a housefly, you might finish before the next full moon. He snorts as I swallow my drink. I huff in annoyance and take another, this time much deeper gulp. Forcefully chugging the ale might not be pleasant, but it's actually better than the lingering bitterness when I take my time with it. Speaking of, I look at his moonstone, finally having a somewhat natural segue into a proper conversation with him. Are all wolves born during the same night, Moon Brothers? Like you and Ranok. I shrug, taking a bite of the sausage to get rid of the aftertaste. In truth, now the sausage doesn't seem that bad. It pairs well with the ale. Masks its bitterness, that's for sure. I look to Vulgor expectingly, as he takes his time with another gulp. He eventually lets out a sigh and rubs his lips. Why do you ask? Well, since you said blood relations don't mean much, I'm kinda curious, as you two make a big deal about the Moon Brother thing. How do wolves become Moon Brothers? You have to be born in the waters of the same moon well during the same phase of a luna. A moon well? I ask, cutting off another slice of bread. I watch as a wolf walks over to the ale barrel, helping himself to a third mug. It's surprising how fast he can go through those. I'm not even halfway finished. There's a shallow pool to the center of our shrine. It's lined with small stones and filled with clear spring water. He explains, sipping off the excess that began spilling from the mug as he retrieved it from the barrel. I think it's safe to say he enjoys the ale more than my company. The pool supposedly collects the moonlight, blessing the waters, which then are used for different religious purposes. Like birth? I look to him as he takes his seat. Among others. The wolf shrugs as he wets his lips again. I can see he's nowhere near getting drunk. It's almost like drinking water to him. I just have a suspicion that once he has his fill, he'll simply fuck off. I need to pace him a little, so I cut off a piece of sausage and push it his way. Huh. He smiles at my gesture and takes a bite. Those are for you. I know, but they pair well with the beer, and it's plenty enough for me. I smile, taking an idle sip. Fair play. He shrugs, flicking up the remaining piece of sausage and swallowing it with a loud chomp. Anyway, when a female goes into labor, she's brought to the well. Once a pup is born, one of the pebbles reveals itself as a moonstone. Have two females go into labor at the same time? Well, you can guess the rest. That sounds magical. I smile, genuinely amazed by the concept. It sounds so simple and in tune with nature. Their traditions, even if odd, do have a certain allure to them. I guess so. I'm sure there's some trick involved. There's always a trick in religion. He scoffs in annoyance. I wouldn't place much stock in the coincidence of being born at the same time as another pup. That's just a sappy nonsense. You don't believe in it? It's almost amusing how polar opposite those two wolves are, with Ranok screaming fate at everything he sees, while Vul sniffing some sort of deceit everywhere he looks. I might not believe in the supernatural aspect of my bond with Ranok, but I've heard enough about the circumstances of my birth to concede a simple fact. We are moon brothers. The rest is fluff. Oh? I issue involuntarily, expecting a follow-up, but the wolf does not respond. Instead, Vul simply takes another long swig at his tankard, emptying it in one go. Once he bangs it back on the table, he looks at me with confusion. What? What were the circumstances of your birth? Ugh. He rolls his eyes in annoyance. I guess he didn't mean to mention it. We can have another. I propose, to which he only gives me a telling gaze. How can you have another if you haven't even finished your first one? He knows I'm fishing for details, but how can he blame me? Please, you can't leave me hanging like this. Try me. He scoffs, standing up. Fuck, I'm losing him. Okay, I didn't want to do this, but you kinda owe me for the choking. I owe you, you say? He laughs mockingly. Press your luck further, Piglet. You'll earn another scar. I watch as he approaches the door and I fidget with my fingers in panic. At this point, I don't know if it's about the story itself or the fear of being left alone. Moonshine! I shout out as his paw lands on the door handle, almost surprised by the words that came out of my mouth. We can have some moonshine. He croons, narrowing his eyes and looking back at me. That desperate, huh? The black wolf snickers, approaching the cupboard, and I sigh internally. Very well. He walks towards the cupboard and retrieves the familiar clay bottle. I watch as he removes the cork with his teeth, causing a loud pop. Here, earn it. He passes me the bottle and I swallow heavily, feeling the boozy smell hit me once again. This is not going to be pleasant, but I better put up my money where my mouth is. I reluctantly grab the bottle, remembering his initial tip. I tilt my head back and allow a large gulp to slush straight into the back of my throat, swallowing deeply. He mutters in amusement, seeing as I manage to stomach 2 long swigs. Not bad for a suckling. He guzzles down nearly twice as much as I did and passes me the bottle again. It takes all my willpower not to wince as I force myself to take another gulp. Once I put the bottle down on the table, I quickly stuff my mouth with a piece of sausage. Well then, why are you so insistent? He reaches for the bottle and takes another swig. I just want to get to know you. There's nothing worse than a needy drinking buddy. The bottle slides across the table towards me. Especially if they cannot keep up. I narrow my brows defiantly, taking a long gulp of the booze. I'm not really paying it any mind at this point. It stopped burning as it used to. I bang the bottle on the table and look at him angrily. I can keep up, don't worry. I look at him expectantly, to which he simply shrugs. I didn't agree to anything, did I? Ah, come on, not fair. Life ain't fair, Piglet. Get used to it. Come on, Vul, don't be like that. Ugh, Verissa's right. You talk too much. Especially for someone with a death penalty over their head. The tribe already knows I'm here. Yeah, would be a shame if they found out you can speak as well. He nods towards the open windows. Oh shit. Vul chuckles, watching me scramble to close them one by one. Relax, Piglet. It was just a joke. No one would dare to eavesdrop on us while I'm here. Not even Hal? I stop my frantic efforts, looking at him with worry. Especially not Hal. He ain't the bravest pup in the pack, and in this tribe everyone knows to stay the fuck away from me. Maybe in time I can teach you as well. Mighty curious how for a preykin you seem to have very little survival instincts. I roll my eyes, slightly annoyed he caused my heart to pound like a drum. Thanks, I really needed a good scare. I mumble, returning to my seat. Ha, it wasn't a scare, Piglet. You are as clueless as actual livestock. If anyone around finds out that you're ready for the knife, it's off to the chopping block. Again, I roll my eyes, this time at his apt analogy. Thanks. Noted. Simple, keep the windows closed when talking with Ranok would suffice. You should cut the talking to a minimum, really. This cottage became a talking point, and there will be plenty of noses sniffing about. Anyway, time for me to go. He stands up and takes a final gulp from the clay bottle. Stayed here long enough as it is. Why? Afraid other wolves will think you're enjoying the company of an otherkin? I grumble, thinking it was a jab at me. As if I care what others think. I simply can see that you've got your hands full. He looks around the clean house. Ranok's dirty laundry won't clean itself. You dick. Besides, you're all out of booze. He tips the bottle over and lets it roll towards the edge of the table, forcing me to rush in and catch it before it crashes onto the floor. Nice one. He winks at me in approval as he pulls on the front door. Verissa should be with you in a bit. Try not to get killed between now and then. The black wolf nods and leaves the house. With Vulgor gone, I'm faced again with the dreaded feeling of loneliness. No, not loneliness, but being alone. For whatever reason, I feel almost under siege when there's no one around me. I need to occupy myself, and with the growing fear inside my chest, I have to do it now. I quickly glance at the cupboard, remembering that Vulgor mentioned Ranok did some research on my kind. Considering my morning conversation with the Grey Wolf, it might be a good idea to try to find out more about my people. At least it'll be something to do. I approach the cupboard and pick up the topmost volume. It's bound in gilded, red leather with a large golden plate donning its cover. The emblem is diamond-shaped and has a stylized paw print pressed into it. It looks awfully expensive, that's for sure. 6 Tribes of Turnen. As I flip through the pages, it seems to be some sort of chronicle. There are different names written into it, supported by dates and details relating to them. There's a long and boring roll call of people long dead, going by the way the page is aged. Nope, this one's of no use to me, especially without context. I mean, there might be some human names here, but then again, how would I know? Also, the paw print on the cover tells me it's rather unlikely. I place the book down and pick up a blue tome which lies underneath it. It's much larger, even though more humbly decorated. The Kael Tiger Rebellion. Another history book, and this one obviously not about the humans. I wonder why Ranok has it. Surely, it didn't aid him in his research. I'm about to put it down when I realize those wolves kept bringing tigers up an awful lot. It might be worth giving it a quick read. I sit myself down comfortably, browsing through the book. It's a hefty volume and I don't feel like reading it whole. Not to mention, by the looks of the sun in the sky, there's little daylight left anyway. I skim the pages as briefly as I can, each of them filled with dates and names that mean nothing to me and which are gone from my mind the moment I read them. No, however, on the whole, it seems to be a detailed account of an ancient war spanning a century or so, which started as the title suggested by the Tigiri, rising in rebellion against the Old Kingdom. Seems that long ago, Avalon used to be ruled by lions, who, at least according to this book, were monstrous tyrants. At first, the Tigiri fought alone, but over the years their bravery attracted other kin to join their struggle. Decade by decade, their alliance grew until at the very end, the Old Kingdom was no more, and the Lion King had to abdicate. It was so surreal to read about other beastmen. This really is a living, breathing world with its own history and customs. How can I feel so misplaced here? I sigh in frustration, burrowing myself into the book. It's not a pleasant read, and in fact most of the information is lost on me, but at least it passes the time. Eventually, I place the book down, utterly confused by the contents. None of this rings any bells. However, from the looks of things, the tigers don't seem to be as bad as the wolves paint them to be. Even more odd is the fact that wolves do not feature in this book. I quickly glance over the pages again, trying to find any mention of them, but it's almost as if they didn't exist. Before I can expand on my research, I hear a knock at the door. It must be Verissa. I close the book with a sigh of relief and returning it back to the cupboard. Not only was the read very dull, but in the dimly lit room it was outright laborious on my eyes. I barely noticed how dark it got. Emilio, you there? I approach the door without a word, remembering Vulgor's warnings. I pull on the latch, releasing the lock and allowing Verissa to enter. The female rushes into the room and I quickly close the door behind her. You're uncharacteristically quiet. Good. She nods in satisfaction. But don't worry, I wasn't followed. The feast starts soon, so very few would waste their time here. What about Tano? My, it can be taught. She smiles with a genuine pride on her muzzle. He's busy. I'm sure of it. He won't have time to sniff about. I watch as she leans over the shelf and retrieves a small plate. Only now do I notice that she has a small satch on her waist, from which she takes a small vial and some fresh bandages. Why are you sitting in the dark? Do I really want to admit that I have no idea how to start a fire without burning this house to the ground? She's been questioning my age an awful lot. I don't want to come across as utterly clueless as well. I prefer it this way, less conspicuous. Right. I can see this wasn't exactly a convincing answer. Well, have it your way. She kneels down, slowly undoing my reddened dressing. I watch after strip is removed, revealing my blood-crusted side. There is a large scab covering the cut itself, but otherwise everything looks fine. How do you find your current living arrangements? She asks absent-mindedly while inspecting my entire side. What do you mean? Do you like it here with Ranok? I guess? It's a simple yes or no question, Emilio. The female mutters, giving me a telling look. Yes, sorry, I'm happy here. Again, she sounds unconvinced. Why do you ask? I ask because the elders preferred to house you in the stockades. The stockades? Our prison, and at first I was inclined to agree on account of your... She cuts off diplomatically, obviously trying to find a proper word. I decide to spare her the trouble. Buck up? Quite so. She smiles softly, placing a small cloth onto the plate and pouring the contents of the vial over it. The tincture has a slightly purple color and immediately soaks into the material. That got Ranok fired up like little ever does. He insists you become his ward instead. A peculiar choice, but he is the heir apparent. It was hard for the elders to say no, especially since he was ready to tear anyone to shreds over the issue, myself included. My eyes widen in shock, and she chuckles, catching my surprise. Figuratively speaking, of course, at least in my case. Either way, To soften the spectacle and to make his claim on you somewhat less obvious, I offer to take you under my wing instead. She shrugs, giving my wounds a slight push, and I wince in discomfort. Sharp or dull pain? Dull, but only when you press too hard. Curious. Her muzzle twists into a frown as she looks intently at my scar. You wanted me to live with you? Well, it's more complicated than that. But yeah, should you ever want to change your accommodations, all you need to do is let me know. It might take a while to settle, but no. I blurt out almost in a panic, catching her attention, but she doesn't say anything. I'm really happy here. Ranok takes good care of me. Indeed. The female narrows her eyes ever so slightly, but enough for me to register that little shift. Although, thank you for letting me know. I'll keep that in mind. She begins to wipe my side, cleaning it off of all the dried blood, and I begin to feel slight tingling followed by stinging. I wince in discomfort again, but she pays me no mind, her brows still narrowed in focus. Technically, you're under house arrest, and as much as it doesn't sit well with me, it doesn't sit well with Ranok. I'd rather go more subtle about it. I just want you to know that you have a choice, as limited as it is. Thank you, Verissa, that means a lot. Once the entire side is cleaned, she pokes slightly at the scab. Does it hurt? I shake my head. Good. She continues to wipe the scab, washing away much of the dried blood, and reducing it in size until she reveals a fresh wound beneath. She then pours the remaining contents of the vial directly over it, causing me to seize up in pain. It's okay. Don't touch it, she says softly, grabbing the clean dressing and covering the cut. So, you guys getting along okay? Does that surprise you? A little bit. Why? Call it female intuition and personal experience. Rana can be a little much at times. Yeah. I try to chuckle, ignoring the pain radiating through my entire left side, but I still come across as slightly unnerved. Seems like I'm onto something. I didn't become a shaman for nothing, you know. She begins wrapping my side with a clean strip of bandages, making sure that the new dressing sits nice and tight on my skin. I watch as she works her paws around me in silence, but eventually she forces me to speak up. Well then, you're going to tell me? It's nothing really, I just struggle with reading that wolf. He's very forward, not that I mind, it just takes me by surprise half the time. She pauses her task and looks at me with a slight surprise. Quickly, however, that surprise is replaced with an annoying smile, and she returns to bandaging me up. That's Ranok, all right. I swear, that wolf never stops being a pup. He was playful and teasing ever since we were little. Not to mention, he's a massive flirt. I almost choke on that remark. Sometimes, I don't even think he realizes it. It used to drive me insane, but then I understood it's just how he is. At the end of the day, he's a flatterer. He loves to flatter others just as much as he likes to flatter himself. Yeah, sounds about right. I nod awkwardly. Don't let that fluster you. That's what he's after. If you ignore his teasing, he'll quickly get bored and move on to other jokes. As a last resort, you can just slap his ears. Moon knows it's a long overdue. Problem is, I don't think I want him to move on to other jokes, nor I really think those are just jokes. Perhaps it's his way of coping with this extremely oppressive society. That, or I'm again reading into things as is typical of me. It's nice to recognize some behavioral patterns among all of this blankness. It's almost as if meeting myself as a completely new person. There, all done. She smiles, admiring her handiwork and patting my side. Thank you. I look down, glad to be rid of that bloodied horror show. You're welcome. This was very fortuitous, you know. She mutters, collecting the reddish stripes from the floor. What was? You started bleeding almost as if on cue, made the whole scene so much more believable. Well, I wasn't acting. He did wolf handle me a bit. The female laughs at my poor joke. Yes, but still, seems the ancestors really look after us in our little gambit. Which is a good omen for sure, as we need all the help we can get to see this through. Thus, I will be burning those at the altar as well. She wiggles my old bundled bandages. That's the key to my protection here, right? Sort of. They are an offering to our ancestors. It's done when one of us is gravely wounded as a sort of intercession. One of you. I emphasized to let her know the distinction wasn't lost on me. Drastic times call for drastic measures. Either way, only a shaman can do this, and only a shaman can determine if the offering was accepted. So here we are. Was it, though? Accepted, I mean. She looks at me a bit shocked that I would ask such a question. Her troubled expression leaves me feeling slightly queasy, making the answer all the more obvious. Nobody knows what the future holds, Emilio. Only time will tell. But for now, everything turned out all right. I give her a slight smile, nodding softly towards my patched-up side. Well, as all right as possibly could, all things considered. I chuckle and I watch as she slowly packs up her things. I follow her with my gaze as she returns the plate to the shelf, feeling a void growing in my chest. The same nagging feeling of desperation fills my heart, and I know another panic attack fast approaches. She's about to leave and I really don't want her to. But before I manage to say anything, she gives me a worried look. What's the matter? Why is your heart racing? Fuck, I keep forgetting about their creepy ability. However, in this instance, it saves me begging another person to keep me company. I'm fine, sorry, just slightly anxious. Well, it's to be expected in your situation. It wasn't exactly a peaceful experience for you these past few days. It wasn't exactly a peaceful... Well, it's to be expected in your situation. It wasn't exactly a peaceful experience for you. I need to enunciate better. Well, it's to be expected in your situation. It wasn't exactly a peaceful experience for you these past few days. She pulls up a chair and sits down on the table, looking at me with a soft smile. I can stay with you for a bit, not long though. I'm needed at the feast. It would be a great insult if I left the chief hanging at the dinner table. Is Ranok going to be there? I ask, worried he'll be held up longer than I would like. Last time he returned quite late. No. She smiles, again giving me this unnerving, knowing look. He was pretty adamant that he will come straight to his home after his patrol. Oh, he shouldn't have. No, he shouldn't. The female agrees with quite a serious tone. However, she quickly chuckles it off. But I long realize that this wolf will do as he pleases, no matter what. She locks her gaze with the clay bottle on the table and gently pushes at it, letting it wobble in place for a moment. I see Vul took advantage of your hospitality. Not as much as I would like. I laugh. I thought we were bonding. He almost told me about the Moon Brother thing when he suddenly bolted. If you want personal details from Vul, you need more moonshine than that. She nods towards the bottle, clearly entertained by the idea of my attempt at befriending the Black Wolf. He's not one to open up easily. Still, him staying even for a little bit is a huge success. How so? Vul is more likely to pick a fight than a conversation. In fact, the only wolf he seems to tolerate is Ranok. Those two... She sighs with genuine admiration. A bond like that is extremely rare, even among our people. I smile, quite touched by the sentiment. They do seem to be true friends, not afraid to call each other out on their bullshit. Something I'm sure is rare even among humans. I envy them that. You and the rest of us, those two are like two sides of the moon, and their moonstones attest to that. Vul seems to suggest his bond with Ranok has nothing to do with the moonstones themselves. She smiles, scoffing softly in amusement. That's his cynical side. He's always wary of everything he cannot see or understand. But at the same time, I can empathize with him. After all, if people avoided you and you were told your entire life that you were damned only because of your necklace, you'd be quite resentful as well. What do you mean? I blink in confusion, causing the female to pause. Her gaze drifts to the side as she clearly ponders whether or not she said too much. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to pry. No, I think you should know. She finally faces me again with a rather serious expression. It should make things a little bit clearer. I nod expectingly. Our births take place in a moon well, a shallow pool of water at the center of our shrine, which collects the light of a luna and infuses the waters with it. I know, Vul explained as much, but why would he be considered damned? The dark moon is a very bad omen. In fact, one of the worst. No female would give birth under it if she could help it. Why? Dark moon represents the unforgiving, ruthless side of a luna. She's the goddess of many faces, and a total eclipse is her most terrifying one. When Vul came into this world, he was seen as the avatar of her wrath, and everyone held their breath. I narrow my brows, slightly skeptical. It's quite easy to brush off one's behavior to the coincidental phenomena. Vul might be quick to anger, but I'm sure it's rather the result of the years of being picked on, rather than the omen itself. And just as everyone held their breath, so did the pup. I tilt my head in confusion. Vul wasn't breathing, nor moving, his eyes closed shut. He was stillborn. My eyes widened in shock, and I almost feel a void growing inside of my stomach. I know he's alive and well, but damn. I did not expect such a turn in this story. When a pup is born, a moonstone appears at the bottom of the pool. But as much as he tried, the shaman couldn't find one, confirming the unthinkable. Vul's mother was heartbroken and refused to leave the well. She cursed the name of Aluna, then bargained with her, and finally she begged, all to no avail. The pain and suffering of the poor female must have been impossible to describe. She simply resigned herself to sitting there, in those waters, frozen in place and holding her unmoving newborn tight. I swallow heavily, my eyes slightly glossed over. I cannot even begin to imagine the horror of having your child die, let alone having it die before I was even born. Shortly after, Ranok's mother arrived at the shrine unexpectedly. Although her pup wasn't due yet, she suddenly went into labor. She was brought into the same waters, resting next to Vul's mother, and just as the last slivers of darkness departed Aluna's ever-changing image, another pup came into the world. Ranok's very first yelp caused Vul to finally stir to life and open his eyes. Their first glances weren't to their respective mothers, but to each other instead. A subtle smile stretches across my face. Within that same moment, the shaman picked up both stones together, one fully black and another fully white. It was almost as if Vul was waiting for his brother to join him, refusing to enter this world alone. That's absolutely beautiful. It's hard to hide how moved I am by this story, but Verissa doesn't judge. In fact, she only smiles, nodding in agreement. It is, and so is their unique relationship. They are the two sides of the same goddess, one full of hatred and coldness, and the other loving and forgiving. I chuckle awkwardly, rubbing my neck to remove a stray tear. I can certainly attest to their polarity from the first-hand experience. Ever since those two were at each other's side, inseparable, just like the moon intended. Nothing would get between them, it would seem not even you. I look at her confused. Why would I get between them? I would never. You already did. Vul is extremely duty-bound. He would do anything for his people. As an outsider, you were a major threat. Every instinct in his body told him to kill you outright. But... She pauses, sighing through a smile. Vul would sooner die than betray Ranok, or cause him pain. That sort of loyalty cannot be bought. You were the greatest test of his devotion. And that devotion is the only reason why you're even alive. The female takes on a more serious tone. Make no mistake, Emilio. Vul tolerates you because Ranok is dead set on you. If not for Ranok, he would have killed you without a second thought. I winced uncomfortably. The feeling of utter confidence in the black male slightly weakened. I always knew that it was Ranok who I owed my life. I just never realized how true the sentiment really was. Vul might be too blind to see it, but your fate was already decided those 2 decades ago when, as a frail pup, he refused to draw his first breath. Fate doesn't happen overnight. It's laid out from the beginning of time until the end of the world. That is why it is so hard to see it as time. That it is why it is near impossible to read it with any sense of certainty. You're basically gazing into eternity, hoping to catch a specific moment in time. She pauses, letting the words sink in, and I'm dumbfounded. Everything she says is true. Had Vul not forged his connection with Ranok, I would have never woken up in this cabin. This is also why I cannot always give a clear answer. Even I have to wait until the truth reveals itself to me, and that takes time and patience. One just has to observe and listen. You're alive because seemingly unrelated events happen at different times, forming a very specific pattern. She vocalizes my own thoughts, causing me to blink in realization. That's what Ranok said. Fate is a lot of things falling into place in just the right way. I quote the Grey Wolf, almost surprised at how profound his wisdom was. Verissa closes her eyes and smiles, betraying a hint of pride. Well, I'm glad to hear he's not just a goof around you. He's not as bad as you make him out to be. I mutter defiantly. You think I don't know that? She laughs me off. He's my friend, and he has been one for a very long time, and will continue to be for many years to come. I'm only harsh on him because I know he's capable of being better. Because that's what he always strives to be. She explains matter-of-factly. He was born and trained to rule, and he has the makings of a great chief. I just want him to make sure the future he laid out for our people will come to pass. Even if his ideas might be controversial, radical. She interrupts me through a chuckle. Dear boy, you're the walking embodiment of those. A living, breathing proof that this wolf will do anything as long as he believes it's the right thing to do. It's about time there was a wolf in charge with a moral compass and steel resolve to follow it. A moral compass? He told me to follow mine so many times, because that's the truth he strives to live by. He's really an amazing wolf. The fact that both Verissa and Vul placed their faith in him proves it beyond a doubt. It explains why I feel so safe around him. With Vul at his side and you to advise him, it seems nothing can stay in Ranok's way. I smile. Fate, Emilio. The female nods affirmatively. Everything was arranged before any of us was even born. All we have to do is play our parts. And now that also includes you. She stands up, issuing a melodic laugh. What's so funny? Not in my wildest dreams would I think a human would be the key to the future of my people. I'm still trying to piece together all the parts, but so far you fit into this puzzle. She rests her paw on her hips, looking around with a slight amusement. Ancestors sure do like to laugh in the face of the living, but when you're dead, the only thing you have left is a sense of humor. The female pushes the chair back into place and approaches the doors. I better head out, otherwise Ranok's father is going to have another fit. Okay. I nod, standing up and approaching her. I pull on the handle, opening the doors for her. My, you do play your part well. You might survive us yet. She ruffles my hair, and I blink in confusion, not really sure what she meant. Oh, you're gonna find out later. I'm just being polite. You keep tight. Ranok should be coming back soon. As the female leaves, I close the doors behind her. The house got incredibly dark and quiet with her departure, but I won't let that bother me. Despite the creeping fear inside my heart, I simply shake it off and sit down, looking at the window. The ominous presence deep inside my mind stirs, growing bolder with each passing moment. I try to distract myself. I must distract myself. I cannot let it win. Verissa gave me a lot to think about, so I focus on her conversation instead. She certainly managed to clear some of the doubts about Ranok. I can now clearly see that he's simply letting off steam whenever he can. It's the only way to avoid breaking under such immense pressure. I don't think I would be able to cope with so many expectations placed on my shoulders. It's incredibly impressive how well he manages, all things considered. And then there's Vul, whom I really need to be careful around. It would seem I've mistaken his leeway for friendliness. I can see he is genuinely amused by me, but it's definitely in the context of me being Ranok's path. He's just entertaining his friend's whim. But I can work with that. After all, the foot is in the door. I know now how harsh Vul's upbringing was, growing up believing you were born bad. That must have been rough. A self-fulfilling prophecy. Him keeping distance is now so much more understandable. Yes, he is quick to anger, he is violent, but if a wolf like Ranok cherishes him so much, then Vul cannot be evil. No, I don't see him that way. Blackstone be damned. If he means so much to Ranok, then he means so much to me. You mean nothing. Suddenly, the strangest of feelings overwhelms me, as if I were contracting onto myself while the walls got bigger and taller. The shadow seems to elongate, reaching out from within the dark corners, and I immediately shift my gaze onto the table, locking my eyes with the woodwork pattern. It's not real. It's just in my head. I breathe heavily, not even realizing when I start to shiver. A torturous moan stretches across the back wall, as if the sudden expansion put a strain on the house. It feels like the room twists and contorts, with the walls closing in on me. Get a grip, Emilio. I grab my head, pleading with myself. I know this is just a panic attack, nothing more, but the sound continues, almost as if trying to prove me wrong. Stumbling to my feet, I nervously look around the room. I feel so small and insignificant, as though I shrunk and lost at least half of my height. I was undersized for this place before, but now it looks as if I can't even reach the table anymore. What's going on? My feet move back as I retreat from the kitchen, but when I feel the room begin to spin, I simply run into the bedroom and slam the door shut. Fuck this! I slump down, resting my crying face into my knees. Fuck this shit! This isn't normal. My tears flow like waterfalls. I'm bawling my eyes out, and I realize that if I allow my wailing to continue, I will draw unnecessary attention to myself. I try to stabilize my breathing, hearing it rattle loudly across the room. I remind myself what Ranok used to do, and I embrace my shoulders, slowly squeezing them in rhythm of my palpitating heart. Breathe in. I recall his caring voice. And breathe out. With much struggle, I manage to rein some form of self-control. As my breath slows down, I take in the scent of the woods outside, almost feeling as if the wolf was here with me. You're all alone. I look around the empty room, feeling utterly helpless. I'm completely at the mercy of my empty mind. I don't even know what the hell is wrong with me, or why my emotions spiral out of control so violently. One thing is certain, I'm alone in this world. With each passing day, it becomes clearer that I've lost everyone. My family, my friends. Surely I had those. My life, such as it was, is now gone, replaced by whatever the fuck this is. My sanity cannot rely on Ranok forever, but for the time being, that wolf is the key to keep whatever the hell is going on with me in check. I don't have much of a choice but to lean in. I try to swallow, but a lump sticks halfway down my throat. I notice the jug of water on the cupboard and I get up. I pour myself a cup and drink that thirstily. I'm parched and a realization finally dawns on me. It must have been the booze. This weird episode was just me tripping on whatever the hell it was we drank. I slap my head in mild annoyance. I'm such an idiot. I should not be drinking in my current state of mind. It's literally asking for trouble. I finally compose myself and take a deep breath, glad to find a reason behind all this madness. When I look around the dark room, a slight unease fills me once again. It's getting late, so it shouldn't be long before Ranok returns. Or so I hope. A chill creeps down my back, sending a shiver across my entire body. It's gotten cold again. I look at the chest, remembering there was some old clothes in there. As it creaks open, I look at the contents. There's the swords, some of his old loincloths, doubtless one of which I was gagged with, and a spare cloak. I pull it out and flap it around to straighten the fabric. It's clean for the most part, I take an idle sniff. Phew. It's musky. Very musky. I drop it to the floor. That's like a whole week of extensive workouts. But then again, I reluctantly trail the empty room. It looks so foreboding and unwelcoming. Being stuck on my own in this dark old house only makes it easier to surrender myself to despair and longing. Despite the sweaty smell, the cloak does remind me of him, almost as if a piece of him was still here. And it is cold. I sigh and pick up the cloth, wrapping it around my shoulders. It's so snug. It feels as if he himself embraced me, maybe a little exhausted after a spar, a bit stinky, but still very much smelling like the forest. I decide to seat myself on the ledge to look at the woods outside. It's a very calm night with a bright moon high above the treetops. The slow rustling of the canopy is much more soothing and calming than the dark interior of the house. But there is no escaping the darkness stalking my mind. I feel as if I'm being watched. Again, my heart sinks and I burrow myself into the cloak, inhaling deeply. His scent calms me down slightly, but my heart is almost racing. The ease of which I freak out is alarming, but then again, I really don't have a clue what happened in those woods. I huddle myself, waiting for the oblivion to claim me, but there is no such luck. I have to endure my tortured thoughts for what feels like an eternity until I hear the doors of the house finally creak open. Ranok returned. And that's where I'm going to leave it for today. It's quite a pickle this human is in, who keeps having these random dark thoughts creeping on him whenever he's alone and in the dark. I wonder what that could be all about. But, like, seriously, I don't know what that's all about. And, well, thank you all for watching / listening. If you would like to play Far Beyond the World yourself, there will be a link down in the description. If you would like to support the creator, there will be a link down in the description for his Patreon. And if you would like to follow the creator on Twitter, there will be a link down for his Twitter. And I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.